Yusuf.
Hi, I'm John McMaster here in my Silicon Valley garage. Yusuf, I hear we've been doing some macro photography.
Yeah, so this week I was, using my brand new 3D printer to print a little adapter ring that'll fit on my DSLR to make it take macro photographs. And this is obviously the poor man's version because you can buy very high-end lenses for macro photography. But if you go search along the web, there are actually a pretty common ways of doing this. So I think uh, couple, and then I did find a couple of really unexpected insights. One was just what I thought the definition of macro photography is.
Okay, I'm trying to think. So when I think of macro being like, I guess, large as opposed to micro, so like large upscaled photograph, I guess that would be my.
Kind of what basically macro photography is taking something really tiny like an insect
Mhm.
and going up close to it and blowing up the image, right? So that's what people think of macro photography is, like the real close-up shots of like insect heads or like really tiny things.
What differentiates macro photography from microscopy?
I think it's just a level of
Mm.
enlargement.
Okay,
But actually, that's a real good question. So I've been dabbling in photography for like a decade or more, right? And I have a general idea. I think everybody has a general idea of what a macro photograph is, right?
sure.
What I actually found out recently is that there's a fairly strict definition of macro photography.
Really? Okay, what is that?
Right. And this I think is just commonly is no longer actually something that people kind of like adhere to.
Okay,
But originally, I think the definition of macro photography is that the subject presented on the negative, the photograph negative, or currently the sensor on a 1-to-1 ratio size,
okay,
or bigger. But I think originally it meant it should be 1-to-1, and then it's kind of like expanded to or bigger, right? So
gotcha. Okay,
let me give you an example. So like let's say you had your DSLR camera and the sensor was the exact size of a quarter, right? Like this, just a US quarter. If you were to take a macro photograph of the quarter, it would actually fill the complete sensor if the sensor was the size of a quarter,
sure, yeah.
because it's a 1-to-1. And so I mean, I think that was kind of interesting that there actually was that specific definition. Like whenever I thought of Mac Pro, I thought, oh, you just take uh, like really big photos, close-up photos of very tiny things, right?
Sure.
So
Now, that definition though is a little bit wonky in the modern age though with like digital sensors and you wouldn't have film so much anymore, right?
but I think that still holds true, right? It's a 1-to-1 on the sensor.
Sure, yes. Okay.
Right, right. So, but I mean, and I think nobody really adheres to like, oh, this is exactly a macro photograph or not. It's just like people think of they're close-up shots of tiny things, right?
Sure. Okay.
And so getting to what I wanted to do was I didn't want to buy any expensive lenses. I did have just a standard, somewhat cheap DSLR, and
Sure.
there is a way to modify this to take pretty decent macro photographs.
Okay. Using perhaps a new toy.
Yes, my new Prusa Mini 3D printer, which I gotta say, so far I haven't used it, more than a few weeks, but it's been holding up great. Like I think it's a great little printer.
Nice.
Um,
So what did you do then?
so do you know? Have you heard of how to like modify an SLR to take macro photographs?
No, I deal a lot with microscopy. I have a very rough idea of how DSLR works, not in any detail. So you'd probably have to give me
Okay.
a little background.
So if you search for DSLR macro photography rig, or how to take some, uh, the most common thing, and this was the I thought the only way, the easy way to do it was you take your lens out. So this is the lens. You pop it out,
Okay.
you reverse it, and you put it on here.
Okay.
And this allows you, because the way the lens elements have changed up, it allows you to take those beautiful little macro photographs, right?
Sure.
And if you look, people sell these, they're called little adapter rings, little plastic rings. It screws on to this part of the lens
Now,
and it,
now to clarification, you usually have like a polarizer that screws onto the front of those, right?
yes, right. And
Okay.
so there are threads, standard threads in pretty much most lenses
Hmm.
where, you can screw on here and you can just, hook it up onto the body and that's
Sure.
how you do it, right? So
Okay.
no special equipment, this is a cheapo standard lens that came with it. But you can still take pretty nice photographs. Now, and that's actually what I was trying to get to. I found, let me hook this up so that dust doesn't go back in. Um, I found, a 3D file on Thingiverse, and it's actually in the description if anyone wants to go ahead and print it. Um, and so this is what I printed. I initially thought this was the reversing ring, as they're called, which you reverse the lens and attach it.
Sure. Yeah.
But it did not turn out to be that. So this, what it is actually an extender ring.
Hmm.
So it sits in between the lens and the body right here,
Okay.
right? And what it does is it pushes the lens away from the body, which also seemingly gives you the ability to take macro photographs. I mean, I guess by, by changing the focal length or the focal plane. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to dig into the science of this. I actually, I really do want to get into it because it seems pretty interesting.
Yes, and I think at some point in the future, not now, I just went through a very similar issue with my microscope. So what you're doing almost pains me a little bit, since I've just gone through great lengths to do exactly not what you're doing. But yes,
Right,
for your setup, yes, it apparently that'll enlarge it. I think it's projecting kind of like a cone of light, right? And by moving it
right.
back,
Right,
yeah,
and
you're
and,
getting
and
focus center.
I kind of think I know what's going on, but I don't want to like tell people what's going on till I know what exactly is going on, right?
Sure.
But that was the second interesting thing of this project is
Yeah.
it totally like surprised me that this was actually extending because I've never in years of searching for macro photography rigs and adapters and things ever seen this being the solution. It's always been reverse the lens.
Sure. And do you know by chance how is that length selected? Is that a magic number of some sort?
So he had a couple of different sizes. Like the one that I have is a 20 millimeter extender, but you have 40, 80. You can stack them up. I think the smaller extensions work better, like easier with most lenses. So he
Hmm.
said try that, and I actually have a long extender printing right now. So
Oh,
we'll
nice.
see how far I can stretch. I mean, I might like really push this thing and
Sure.
see how close I can get.
And did you characterize it like how much of an increase did you get versus the original setup?
I do have some example photographs. I mean, these are quick and dirty ones. They're
Sure.
kind
Yeah.
of blurry. I wasn't holding a tripod or anything, but they turn out pretty nice. Like you can definitely see the difference. Let
Maybe
me
that's yeah. Pull them up. Maybe.
yeah, let me project it.
Let me
Here we
stand by.
go. Stand by, please. Okay, so this can you see this?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so this is as close as I could get with my normal standard DSLR to 3D printed sample that I had.
Okay.
Using the ring I have, which is probably you could probably use a longer ring and get closer, but this is what I could do, right?
Okay.
A pretty marked difference. I mean, like if you look, you can see clear layer lines. And it's pretty nice. It's quite close. I do have another second sample image. So here's as close as I could get with the standard DSLR, and this it's a little blurry, but I think that was because I was hand holding it.
I see.
But as you can see, it's big. I do want to run some like calibration targets to see if it actually is a one-to-one. So if it
Yes.
conforms to the macro photography definition.
The other
But
thing that I would be interested for you to do is photograph a flat surface and see if you get spherical aberrations around the edges. Because what I am guessing, based on the exercise I just went through on my microscope, that if you are not using the optimum imaging plane, I think you're going to introduce spherical aberrations. Maybe not enough where it's an issue, but I do wonder if you're going to see those start appearing.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool. Like, I definitely do want to run some, calibration analysis on like all of this, and see how it goes. I think, depending, because given the size of optics and things like that, I think it's not going to be as pronounced as what you're seeing, obviously.
Sure.
But even in standard, just using the standard DSLR to take normal pictures, you definitely see slight variations around the edge, and that it gets more pronounced on wide shots. If you run like telephoto shots, like zoom shots, they are less prone to that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Um, so I mean, I wouldn't expect them to be very pronounced in these macro shots, but I think if you really look for them, I think they will be there. But yeah, it's a good idea. We can run maybe some analysis and down the road present again on how things went.
Gotcha. Well, I think that all sounds good. Do you have any sort of similar projects lined up? Like you mentioned that you might want to do some focus stacking, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so like getting back on just the photography bandwagon, I have been interested in taking pictures with focus stacking, and this is something that people do with macro photographs. When you take a macro photograph, the field of view gets really shallow. So like just a little bit of the image is really sharp, and the rest is kind of blurry because you're I guess zooming in so far, right? Um, what people have done to counteract that is a thing called focus stacking, which is you take a whole bunch of images of the same exact subject at different focal lengths. So you take one where the closest part of the image is in focus, then you move it a little further back and a little further back and a little further back, and then you use software to interpolate all those images, and then you get a fully sharp image, and they look pretty awesome. Like they are very impressive.
How do you plan on controlling the Z to get that focus stack?
So I think you know like if I'm going to try it with a couple of images, it's going to be manual. Like you
Oh,
can
okay.
just yeah, you can change it a little bit, make sure that the focus is kind of you cover different areas of focus as you change it.
Sure.
But yeah, if you're taking a whole bunch of these, you definitely want to automate it, because you got to take a lot of photographs, and they got to be pretty accurate, right? If you miss.
I guess what I was wondering, could you 3D print an adapter so you could mount your camera to your 3D printer and use that to do automated control?
Yeah, 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 that's pretty interesting. And that comes back to just being able to mount other things on the 3D printer, right?
Yeah.
Because you theoretically you have access to controlling the different axes of the 3D printer.
I don't know if that voids your Prusa warranty. I don't know how picky they
uh,
are about that stuff.
I the one I have, I think, may not be able to handle it because it's the mini, and so it doesn't
Oh.
have. It's a cantilever design, like it doesn't have support on one end. So if you put a heavy SLR on the head, it's gonna
Could
it's
you put a
gonna
heavy? Could you
buckle.
put a counterweight on the other side?
No, because it ends, right. It's not
Oh,
actually
okay.
weighted. It's not a balanced this thing. It's
Gotcha.
perfectly fine. Like I mean, the quality is pretty impressive for just 3D printing, but if you have anything heavier, it won't work. In fact, I don't know how much you know about 3D printers, but usually the ones that have direct drives
Hmm.
for the element feed is considered better, but the mini doesn't have that because they wanted to reduce weight on the head side of it.
Gotcha. Interesting.
So yeah, so if people have questions about that, we can do a follow up on that. But yeah, it's a pretty surprising design. I mean, people thought this wouldn't work. People thought it would give crappy prints, but it's been quite impressive. I think overall that company does a great job with just the full stack, the full like consumer experience.
Hashtag please sponsor us.
Yeah, please sponsor. Hey, I do need some filament.
Well, I think with that, maybe this is a good point to stop unless you have anything else to add or any other questions.
No, I think this was good. I mean, definitely, I think I want to follow up with some more like checking up on like the science behind this and kind of explaining what's going on and all of that. But yeah, this was just what I've been doing this week.
Sounds good. And then maybe next week we're still discussing it, but perhaps calibrating my microscope, I think might be a good follow up to this to some more optics. And with that, I'm signing off. Thanks for listening. And until next week.
Yep. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.